Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Galina, and I am from Belarus. If you had asked me years ago where my life would take me, I could never have imagined the profound spiritual transformation I was destined to undergo. I was raised in a quiet household in the heart of Belarus, where winters lasted forever, and the silence inside our home was broken only by my mother's voice, always speaking of God. She would look at me across the kitchen table and say, with an unshakable certainty I could never quite understand, "Galina, we must live for God. Everything else passes, only He remains." I would nod and move on. The world outside was too loud for me to truly hear her. Yet despite being surrounded by my mother's unwavering faith, a deep, pervasive sense of emptiness lingered in my heart through all the years of my youth. I entered adult life convinced I had everything figured out. Ambition, independence, the comfortable illusion of being in control. I pursued all of it without looking back. But the world has a way of correcting those who believe they are in control. The difficulties came slowly at first, then all at once. Relationships that I thought were solid fractured quietly. Circumstances shifted in directions I had not planned for. And then, the accident. I remember walking out of the hospital afterward, my hands trembling, my mind unnaturally still in the way that only shock can produce. The car was gone. The certainty I had carried for years was gone with it. Standing on the pavement in the cold Belarusian air, looking up at a sky that offered me nothing, I asked, for the very first time in my life, a question I had never dared ask out loud. Why? Why is this happening? What am I living for? Something began to emerge from within me then, a recognition I could not dismiss. Every time I made choices I knew were wrong, something would happen. A consequence, a collision, a wall appearing where I had expected a door. It was too precise to be coincidence, too consistent to be chance. I was not religious. I had no formal practice, no tradition I followed with real sincerity. But I could not deny the feeling that something vast, something patient, something immeasurably greater than myself, was refusing to let me drift too far, without calling me back. I need to find the God my mother always spoke about. I told myself one winter evening, sitting alone in my apartment, the snow falling in slow silence beyond the glass. If He exists, and I feel with everything inside me that He must, then I cannot keep living as though He is irrelevant to my life. And so I began to search. I returned to the traditions of my childhood, reading carefully and asking the questions I had long suppressed. The faith I had inherited offered comfort, stories, community, inherited warmth. But I found myself standing again and again before walls I could not pass. The questions I carried were too large, too honest, too stubborn to be quieted by sentiment alone. How could God need anything? How could the Almighty, the one who fashioned the endless skies I had looked at all my life, who set the stars in their courses and breathed life into dust, be divided? How could the divine, infinite and absolute and beyond all comparison, be split across forms I could not reconcile with the idea of a boundless creator? How could the one who made everything also be contained within time? These questions were not born from arrogance. They were born from love, from a desperate, aching desire to truly know the one I now believed had been guiding my entire life from the very beginning. Then, through a chain of events I now understand to have been guided with infinite precision, I came into contact with a Muslim woman at my workplace. Her name was Amina. She was quiet, composed, and professional, and there was something in the way she moved through her days that I had no proper words for, a kind of rootedness, a peace that did not depend on her circumstances. Difficulties would arise at work, the kind that sent others spiraling, and she would meet them with a steadiness I had never witnessed in another human being. Intrigued by this quality I could not name, I began to ask her small questions about her faith, about what she believed. She answered without urgency, without the pressured need to convince. She simply spoke from a place of settled certainty, as if the truth she held was so real, so deeply rooted, that it required no performance and no force to be true. One afternoon, she offered to let me hear a recitation from the Koran. "Just listen," she said gently. "You don't have to understand the language. Just let yourself hear it." I agreed, more out of curiosity than expectation. What happened next, I have never been able to fully explain. The sound that filled that room was unlike anything I had ever encountered in my life. It was not music. It was not simply speech. It occupied a space between the two that I had not known existed, something ancient, precise, alive, and deeply, unbearably familiar. My chest tightened before a single conscious thought had formed. My eyes filled with tears before my mind had processed what I was experiencing. Something beneath my reason, beneath all the layers of habit and confusion I had accumulated, responded, as if a part of my soul had been waiting for this exact moment and had recognized in an instant what my mind had not yet been able to reach. I sat there weeping, overwhelmed by a divine presence, and I thought to myself, I don't know the words, but I feel like I understand everything. I must emphasize this. I had not yet read a single translated verse. I do not speak Arabic. And yet something in me recognized what I was hearing, as though it had always been there, buried beneath years of noise and distraction, waiting only to be remembered. I could not eat properly in the days that followed. I could not sleep without returning in my mind to what I had heard. I asked Amina for a translation. I began to read, slowly, carefully, returning again and again to verses that dismantled everything I thought I knew. Say, He is Allah, the One, Allah, the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to him any equivalent. The realization that dawned on me next arrived with the force of something that had always been inevitable, something that had always been true, waiting only for me to be still enough to receive it. This was the answer. This was what I had been circling towards since childhood, since my mother's kitchen table, since the cold hospital pavement, since every sleepless night I had spent wondering if there was something more beneath the surface of my life. God is one, absolute, undivided, without need, without beginning, without end, without partners. The one my mother had carried in her heart all along. It was as if a lightning bolt had struck my soul, illuminating every dark corner of doubt I had ever harbored. I began to learn how to pray, awkwardly at first, without proper form or fluency, then with guidance, then with a quiet, growing, unwavering certainty. I stood on a small mat in my apartment in Belarus, facing a direction I had never faced before in my life, and for the very first time I felt that I was speaking to someone who was truly listening, not to a ceiling, not to an idea, to the One, to the Absolute. When the day came that I pronounced the Shahada, when I said clearly with my whole heart and my full awareness, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I did not feel as though I was becoming something new. I felt as though I was returning to something I had always been, like a river that had spent its entire existence flowing toward a sea it did not know existed, and had finally, after a long and winding journey, arrived. The snow outside my window was the same. The gray Belarusian sky was the same. And yet everything was different. Every accident, every consequence, every painful moment of redirection I had ever lived through, all of it had been mercy. All of it had been the hand of the One who made me, calling me back to himself with a patience and a love I had done nothing to deserve. And sometimes, late at night, when the apartment is quiet and the snow falls again beyond the glass, I think of my mother. I think of her voice at that kitchen table, so certain, so steady, carrying the truth of God in her chest, even when no one around her was ready to receive it. And I weep, not from sadness, from the deepest gratitude I have ever known. She was right all along. She always was. And I am finally home.